The emergency room doors exploded open at 11:47 p.m. Glass rattled. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. The gurney wheels screamed against polished tile as two paramedics rushed through, their faces tight with the kind of fear that comes when time runs out faster than hope. On the stretcher, Private Liam
This is the
Sawyer,
right one.
22 years
Dosage
old,
looks correct.
Navy SEAL, 3 gunshot
Airway
wounds
is clear,
across his
starting manual
torso.
ventilation.
Blood
Pulse is
soaking
thready. We
through
need
field
fluids now.
dressings that
Getting the
should
IV
have been
kit.
changed
Good.
20
Push
minutes
epi.
ago. His chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate rhythm, the kind of breathing that sounds like drowning on dry land. Beside the gurney, a German shepherd, 5 years old, 70 pounds of muscle and loyalty. Military working dog designation, Ranger. The K9's eyes tracked every movement in the emergency room with surgical precision. Ears forward, body coiled, not aggressive, vigilant. The way only combat dogs can be. Dr. Brennan Ashford met them at the Trauma Bay entrance, 34 years old. Johns Hopkins graduate, 2 years in emergency medicine, skilled hands, sharp mind, zero combat experience. That last part mattered more than anyone realized. Trauma Bay 3, Ashford called out, his voice steady but climbing an octave higher than it should. I need a central line kit rapid transfuser and get me O-negative blood, 4 units, now. The paramedics transferred Sawyer with practiced efficiency. Monitors beeped. Alarms started their symphony of warning. Blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, oxygen saturation falling into the danger zone. Ashford pulled on gloves. His fingers fumbled with the second one. He didn't notice. But Ranger did. The dog's nose lifted, nostrils flaring, taking in scents invisible to human perception, gunpowder residue, copper tang of blood, adrenaline sweat, and something else, something wrong. In the corner of the trauma bay behind a rolling supply cart, a woman in faded blue scrubs restocked gauze packages with methodical precision. Gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. No makeup, no jewelry except a plain silver band on her left ring finger. Work boots instead of nursing clogs. Hands that moved with unconscious economy of motion. The kind of efficiency that comes from 30 years of muscle memory. Her name tag read E. Thorne, Pharmacy Supply. Most people in the hospital didn't know her first name. Most people didn't look at her long enough to care. She was part of the background, the night shift supply clerk who kept the shelves stocked and stayed out of the way. Evelyn Thorne was 62 years old. She had not always been invisible. Ashford positioned himself at Sawyer's side, pressed his stethoscope to the young SEAL's chest, listened. His face went pale. Decreased breath sounds on the right side, he said. Possible pneumothorax. We need to. Sawyer's monitor alarm escalated. Blood pressure 60/40. Heart rate 140. Oxygen saturation 82 and dropping. He's crashing. A nurse reached for the crash cart. Another fumbled with IV bags. A third resident appeared in the doorway, froze unsure if he should enter or stay back. Ashford's hands hovered over the Sawyer's chest. Decision paralysis, the worst disease in emergency medicine. I need to intubate, Ashford said. Get me the no-wait. Central line first. We need access. Where's the ultrasound? He was doing everything by the book. Every protocol memorized. Every step practiced. But books don't bleed. Protocols don't die when you hesitate. Ranger made a sound, low, guttural, not a growl, a warning. Then the dog moved, not toward the gurney, away from it, across the trauma bay floor with purpose that silenced every person in the room. Past nurses, past the crash cart, straight toward the supply cart in the corner. Straight toward Evelyn Thorne. She had stopped restocking. Her hands had gone still 30 seconds ago. Her eyes had locked onto Sawyer's chest, reading the wound pattern, calculating angles, seeing what the monitors couldn't show. Ranger reached her, sat down, slowly, deliberately raised his right paw. The room froze. Every doctor, every nurse, every technician stopped moving, because what they were watching didn't make sense. Military working dogs didn't salute strangers. They saluted commanders, officers, people who had earned the right to that gesture through blood and fire. Evelyn looked down at the dog. Her face showed nothing, but her right hand moved, just slightly, an acknowledgement invisible to anyone who hadn't spent time in the field. Ma'am, Ashford's voice cut through the silence. I don't know who you are, but I need you to step back. This is a sterile. Evelyn walked past him. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. The way a tide comes in regardless of what stands on the shore. She reached Sawyer's gurney, placed 2 fingers on his neck. Carotid pulse. then moved her hand to his chest, palm flat, feeling for the rise and fall, the symmetry, the truth beneath the skin. "You're losing him," Evelyn said. Her voice was quiet, not soft, quiet the way a sniper's breathing is quiet before the shot. Ashford stared at her. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to." His right lung has collapsed. Evelyn's eyes never left Sawyer's chest. "Tension pneumothorax. You missed it because you were listening with a stethoscope in a room full of alarms. You need to decompress. Now." "I was about to, You were about to intubate a patient with a collapsed lung that would kill him in 90 seconds. The monitor screamed. Blood pressure 58/38, heart rate 150, oxygen saturation 79. Ashford's face went from pale to white. "I need a chest tube kit." "No time." Evelyn turned to the nearest nurse. 14-gauge angiocath, betadine, now." The nurse looked at Ashford. Ashford looked at Evelyn. The monitor kept screaming. Evelyn's hand shot out, not violent, just fast, precise. She took the angiocath from a tray before anyone could stop her, tore open the package with her teeth, poured betadine over her hands. 3 seconds of preparation. Most doctors would need 3 minutes. She found the second intercostal space by touch. No ultrasound, no measuring, just muscle memory from 1,000 field operations where ultrasound meant death because it took too long. "Ma'am, you can't just," Ashford started. Evelyn's voice cut through like a blade. Not loud, absolute. "Step aside, doctor." 4 syllables, spoken with an authority that belongs somewhere else, somewhere darker. Somewhere most people in this hospital had never been and would never understand. Ashford stepped aside. Evelyn placed the needle, found the space between ribs with fingertips that knew anatomy better than any textbook, pushed through skin, through muscle, through intercostal tissue, then through the pleural membrane. A hiss of escaping air filled the trauma bay. Pressure releasing. The lung reinflating with the sound of a balloon finding its shape again. Sawyer gasped. A real breath. His first one in minutes. The monitor alarms changed their tune. Blood pressure climbing, heart rate steadying, oxygen saturation rising through 85, 90, 93. Evelyn withdrew the needle, handed it to a nurse who took it on autopilot, stripped off her makeshift gloves, walked back to her supply cart without a word. The trauma bay breathed again, but it breathed differently now. The air had changed texture. Everyone felt it. No one could name it. Ashford stood frozen, staring at the woman who had just saved his patient's life while making him look like a first-year medical student. "Who are you?" he asked. Evelyn picked up a box of gauze, placed it on the shelf, reached for another. "Supply clerk," she said. "Night shift." "That's not," Ashford started. "You just performed a procedure that—" "Your patient is stable, doctor. I suggest you finish what you started." Her tone offered no foothold for argument, no opening for gratitude, no explanation for what had just happened. She had done a job, the job was finished. Everything else was noise. A young nurse named Emily approached the supply cart. 24 years old, first year out of nursing school, still believed that medicine was about saving everyone. "That was incredible," Emily whispered. "How did you know experience?" Evelyn didn't look up from the supplies. "But where did you learn? Doesn't matter. It matters to me." Emily's voice carried the earnestness of youth. "I want to learn what you know." Evelyn finally looked at her, really looked. Saw the hunger there, the desire to be more than competent, to be exceptional. Evelyn remembered that hunger. She had felt it once, 30 years ago, back when the world still had room for women who wanted to fight. "Then watch, listen, and don't ask questions when the clock is running." Emily nodded. Evelyn returned to her cart. Ranger returned to Sawyer's side. The trauma base settled into the organized chaos of post-crisis stabilization. But Ashford kept staring at Evelyn because he had seen something in those 45 seconds. Something he couldn't name but couldn't ignore. The way she moved, the way she assessed, the way she commanded without raising her voice. He had seen a doctor tonight, just not one wearing a white coat. Ranger lay beside Sawyer's gurney. The dog's eyes never left Evelyn, even as she pushed her cart toward the exit, even as she disappeared into the hallway. The K9 watched, remembered, knew. The night shift moved forward, more patients, more crises. Emergency rooms don't sleep, they just change problems. But something had shifted. The staff looked at the supply cart differently now, at the gray-haired woman who restocked it, who moved like smoke, who saved a life without breaking stride. By 1 a.m. Sawyer was stable enough for surgery. By 2 a.m. he was in the OR. By 3 a.m. he was in recovery. Evelyn was in the break room, alone, eating a sandwich she'd brought from home. White bread, turkey, no condiments. The kind of meal that exists purely for fuel. The television mounted in the corner played CNN with the sound off, closed captions scrolling. Another story about veteran suicides. Another statistic about VA hospital failures. Another politician promising reform that would never come. Evelyn chewed her sandwich, watched the numbers scroll past. 22 veterans per day. Every day. For years. Math that should shock people. Math that had become background noise. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings. Most unknown numbers were scams, warranty extensions, student loans she'd never taken, social security fraud she'd never committed. This one felt different. She answered, said nothing, waited. Commander Thorne. Male voice, military cadence, officer, senior grade, someone who knew how to command and expected to be obeyed. Evelyn's sandwich stopped halfway to her mouth. Commander. No one had called her that in 15 years. No one should know to call her that, ever. Wrong number, she said. No, it's not. The voice carried the weight of classified knowledge. This is Colonel Hayes, Joint Special Operations Command. I need you to listen carefully. Evelyn stood, walked to the break room door, closed it, locked it, returned to her chair. Her body moved on automatic threat assessment. Clear the exits. Secure the perimeter. Control the environment. I'm retired, she said. I'm aware. Retired 15 years ago. Medical discharge. Honorable. Full pension. Disappeared from every database except the ones that matter. Hayes paused. Let that sink in. Private Liam Sawyer, the young SEAL you saved tonight. Someone just tried to kill him. Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. He's in recovery. Guarded. He was in recovery. Guarded. Past tense. 30 minutes ago, a nurse entered his room. Not our nurse. Not your hospital's nurse. Someone wearing scrubs and carrying credentials that should have worked. Should have. The guard noticed her hands. Wrong calluses. Wrong scars. Wrong muscle development. He challenged her. She ran. We found a syringe in the IV port. Succinylcholine. Untraceable if it works. Fatal if it works. We got lucky. Evelyn's mind was already moving through scenarios. Attack in a guarded hospital room. Professional. Insider knowledge. Access to credentials. This wasn't random. What was Sawyer's mission, she asked. That's classified. Then why are you calling me? Hayes let the silence stretch. Evelyn waited. She had learned patience in places where impatience meant death. Because Sawyer is asking for you, Hayes finally said. He won't talk to our medics, won't talk to our officers. He keeps saying one thing, the woman with the bone. The woman the dog saluted. He wants her. I don't know him, but Ranger knows you. Evelyn closed her eyes. Ranger, 5 years old now. She had last seen that dog as a 1-year-old pup in Afghanistan. 2006. A different war. A different world. She had pulled shrapnel out of the dog's hind leg with forceps and morphine and prayer. Had named him Ranger because he needed something solid to answer to. Something that meant he was more than meat and fur and military equipment. The dog remembered, after 18 years, through different handlers, different continents, different lives. Dogs remember who saved them. Where is Sawyer now? Evelyn asked. Undisclosed location. Off book. We're treating this as a compromised asset with insider threats, which means we can't use normal channels. Can't trust the hospital. Can't trust the system. You want me to what, babysit? I want you to keep him alive until we figure out who burned him and why. Hayes' voice hardened. You're not on any active roster. You're not on any pension list that matters. You're a ghost commander, which makes you the safest person in Oregon right now. Evelyn looked at the television, at the veteran suicide number scrolling past. 22 per day, every day. One more soldier with a target on his back. One more casualty in a war most people didn't know was still being fought. When do I start? She asked. Now, we're sending a car, black SUV, tinted windows. Driver will say ghost protocol. You say Ranger qualified. Then you go. I have a shift tomorrow. Call in sick. I don't call in sick. Then quit. Either way, you're not going back to that hospital. Hayes paused. Commander, I know what I'm asking. I know you left for a reason. I know you built a life that doesn't include this. But Sawyer is 22 years old. He's SEAL qualified. He's Ranger qualified. And someone with access to classified databases wants him dead. I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows how to fight. Someone who remembers what it means to leave no one behind. Evelyn stared at her sandwich. White bread, turkey, no condiments, A life of careful routine. Invisible. Safe. Boring. The life she had chosen after too many years of blood and fire and brotherhood that ended in caskets. She had buried her husband 3 years ago. PTSD pills. A final exit that looked like an accident but wasn't. She had watched her daughter deploy to the same war zones that had broken her father. She had spent 15 years trying to be normal, trying to be small, trying to disappear into the background of a world that didn't want women like her anymore. But some things don't disappear. They just wait. "I'll be outside in 5 minutes," Evelyn said. She hung up, threw her sandwich in the trash, walked to her locker, opened it, stared at the contents. Spare scrubs. A photograph of her daughter in uniform. A photograph of her husband before the war broke him. A photograph of her old SEAL team. 8 people, 5 dead, 2 missing. Her. At the bottom of the locker, wrapped in a towel, a knife. 4-inch blade. Fixed. Tanto point. She had carried it through 3 wars. It had saved her life 11 times. She had promised herself she would never carry it again. She picked it up, felt the weight, the balance. The memory of muscle movement that came flooding back like water breaking through a dam. Some things you never forget. You just pretend you did. Evelyn changed out of her scrubs, into jeans, a dark hoodie, work boots with steel toes. She clipped the knife to her belt. Inside the waistband, hidden, old habits, old reflexes, old ghosts waking up and stretching and remembering how to walk. She left through the staff exit. The cold November air hit her face. Portland at 3 a.m. wet streets. Empty sidewalks. The kind of darkness that feels different when you're not afraid of it. A black SUV idled at the curb. Tinted windows. Government plates hidden behind dealer frames. The driver's window rolled down. Man in his 40s. Military haircut. Operator eyes. He looked at Evelyn. Waited. "Ghost protocol," he said. "Ranger qualified," Evelyn replied. The locks clicked. She opened the back door, slid inside. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the hospital. From her life. From the safety of invisibility. Evelyn looked out the window at the city passing by. Streets she had walked for 15 years. A life she had built from silence and routine and deliberate smallness. That life was over now. She could feel it. The shift, the change, the old skin cracking open. Something underneath that had been sleeping. Dormant, waiting for the call that always comes, because some people are built for war, and war always finds them, even when they hide, even when they pretend, even when they spend 15 years stocking shelves and keeping their heads down and hoping the world forgets. The world never forgets. It just waits for you to remember. The SUV drove through Portland's empty streets, heading east, away from the hospital, away from the life Evelyn had built from ashes and silence, toward whatever came next, toward the soldier who needed her, toward the bong who remembered, toward the ghost she had tried so hard to bury. Commander Evelyn Thorne was 62 years old. She had not always been invisible, and tonight she would stop pretending she was. The SUV drove for 40 minutes through streets that grew progressively darker and emptier, past the suburbs, past the industrial parks, into the kind of neighborhood where streetlights flickered more than they illuminated, and buildings wore their abandonment like old scars. They stopped in front of what had once been a Veterans Affairs hospital wing, built in the 70s, closed in the 90s. Left to rot while politicians argued about budgets and veterans died waiting for care that never came. The driver spoke for the first time since leaving the hospital. "Third floor, room 317, 2 MPs at the door. They're expecting you." Evelyn opened her door, stepped into the cold. The SUV pulled away before she could close it. Gone, as if it had never existed. That was how black operations worked. No paper trail, no witnesses. Just ghosts moving through the dark. The building's front entrance had been pried open. Recently, the lock showed fresh damage. Someone had wanted this place accessible but not obvious. Evelyn pushed through. Her boots echoed on tile that hadn't been cleaned in 20 years. Graffiti covered the walls. Tags from kids who thought abandoned buildings were playgrounds. They had no idea what this place had been, what it had meant. How many men had died here waiting for a country to remember them? She found the stairs, climbed. Her knees protested but held. 62 years old. Her body kept a ledger of every mission, every jump, every forced march. But bodies were like weapons. Maintenance mattered more than age. Third floor. The hallway stretched into darkness. Emergency lighting had been rigged. Battery-powered LEDs casting harsh shadows. Professional work. Military work. Someone had secured this location properly. Two MPs stood outside room 317, both young, mid-20s, armed, alert. They watched Evelyn approach with the wariness of soldiers who had been told to expect trouble, but not told what kind. "Commander Thorne," the taller one said. Not a question. Recognition. He had been briefed. "Private Sawyer inside," Evelyn asked. "Yes, ma'am. Stable. Scared. Won't talk to anyone except the woman who saved him. And Ranger?" "With him. Dog won't leave his side." Evelyn nodded. The MP opened the door. She stepped through. The room had been a patient ward once. 6 beds. Now only one was occupied. Medical equipment had been brought in. Monitors, IV stands. Enough to keep someone alive, but nothing that required infrastructure. This was a field hospital. Temporary. Deniable. Liam Sawyer lay propped up against pillows. Young face. Too young for the shadows behind his eyes. He wore a hospital gown. Bandages wrapped his torso. His skin had the pallor of blood loss and fear. Ranger lay on the floor beside the bed. The dog's head lifted when Evelyn entered. Ears forward. Recognition immediate. The tail moved. Once. Twice. Not excitement. Acknowledgement. The way soldiers greet each other after long years apart. Evelyn approached slowly. Let Sawyer see her clearly. Let him make the choice to trust or not. "Private Sawyer," she said. "I'm Evelyn Thorne. You saved my life." His voice was rough, damaged from intubation. "At the hospital. Dr. Ashford was going to kill me, and you stopped it." Dr. Ashford was following protocol. Sometimes protocol isn't enough. "Ranger saluted you." Sawyer's eyes moved to the dog. "He's never done that. Not even for our team commander. Only for you." Evelyn knelt, extended her hand to Ranger. The dog stood, limped forward. His right hind leg carried an old injury. 18 years old, shrapnel, Afghanistan, a wound that never fully healed. She ran her fingers along the scar tissue. Ranger leaned into her touch. Memory lived in muscles and scars. The dog remembered pain, remembered the hands that had taken it away. 2006, Evelyn said quietly. "You were barely a year old. Took shrapnel during an IED strike outside Kandahar. Your handler was dead. You were bleeding out. I pulled 7 pieces of metal from your leg. With forceps I sterilized over a cigarette lighter." Sawyer stared. "That was you. That was someone else. Someone I used to be." "Who are you now?" Evelyn stood, met his eyes. "Someone who keeps people alive when everything wants them dead. Same job, different uniform." Sawyer's hands gripped the sheets. "They tried to kill me tonight. In the hospital. Someone in nurse scrubs. She had the right badge, the right credentials. The guard said her hands were wrong. What does that mean?" "Means she wasn't really a nurse." Evelyn pulled a chair close to the bed. Saturday, her body language open, non-threatening. But her eyes never stopped moving. Exits, sight lines, threat vectors, old habits. Nurses develop calluses in specific places, from syringes, from lifting patients, from tools they use every day. Operators develop different calluses, from weapons, from rope work, from things that don't belong in hospitals. So she was military, or former military, or trained by military, either way professional, which means whoever wants you dead has resources. Sawyer's breathing quickened. The monitor beside his bed registered the spike. Heart rate climbing, blood pressure worsening. Fear had its own physiology. "Why would anyone want me dead? I'm nobody, just a SEAL. Just a..." "You saw something." Evelyn's voice cut through his panic. Calm, absolute. "Colonel Hayes told me you were in Yemen. Told me your mission went wrong. What he didn't tell me was what you saw." Sawyer looked away. His jaw worked, struggling with something. Classification, orders. The weight of secrets that felt too heavy for someone barely old enough to drink legally. "I can't," he whispered. "It's classified. I signed. Oaths mean nothing to dead men." Evelyn leaned forward. "Someone tried to kill you tonight. They will try again. And the next time they might succeed. So you can either tell me what you saw, or I can walk out of this room and let you die with your secrets intact. Your choice." Harsh. But truth was a blade. It only worked when it cut clean. Sawyer's hands trembled. He looked at Ranger. The dog stared back. Patient, loyal, waiting for his handler to find courage. "We were supposed to be on a training exercise," Sawyer said finally. "Basic reconnaissance. Map enemy positions. Nothing heavy, nothing classified. But But our coordinates were wrong. Command sent us to the wrong location. We ended up outside a warehouse, abandoned. Or supposed to be abandoned. Evelyn waited. Let him find his own pace. Interruption broke confession. We heard vehicles, trucks, 3 of them. Military, not local, not insurgent, American. Humvees, with our markings. I thought maybe they were lost too. Maybe we could coordinate. But they weren't lost. No, Ned. Sawyer's voice dropped to barely audible. They were making a delivery. Crates, medical equipment, surgical kits, hospital supplies, expensive stuff, military grade. I saw the inventory labels. Everything was supposed to go to field hospitals, to our people. But it didn't. It went to the warehouse, to people who weren't military, civilians, foreign. They paid American dollars. A lot of them. I saw one of our officers counting it, splitting it, passing it out to the drivers. Evelyn felt the pieces clicking into place. Medical supply theft, black market sales, a supply chain that stretched from manufacturers to military hospitals to foreign buyers willing to pay triple the price. And somewhere in that chain, people were making fortunes while soldiers died from equipment shortages. How much? She asked. The transaction I saw $500,000, but that was one delivery. The officer said they'd been running it for 2 years. Multiple times per month. Do the math. Evelyn did the math. $12 million minimum, probably more. Enough money to kill for. Enough money to corrupt entire chains of command. Did they see you? I don't think so. We pulled back. Reported it up the chain. Standard procedure. Sawyer laughed. Bitter. Broken. Standard procedure. That's what got me killed. You're not dead yet. But they tried, which means someone in my command knows what I reported. Someone who's part of it. Someone who saw my report and decided I was a problem. Evelyn stood, paced. Her mind was working through networks, access points. Who had authority to see mission reports? Who had authority to alter them? Who had authority to send hit teams to hospital recovery rooms? The officer you saw in Yemen, did you recognize him? No, wrong unit, wrong branch. He was Navy but not SEAL. Medical Corps. I remember the insignia. Medical Corps, hospital administration, supply chains. The pieces were forming a picture that Evelyn didn't like. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Text from an unknown number. Turn on the news. She found a television in the corner, ancient. Probably hadn't worked in years. But someone had rigged it, connected it to a laptop. Military-grade encryption visible on the screen. She powered it on. Local news. Portland Station. Breaking story. The headline made her blood stop. Mercy General Hospital Administrator found dead. Apparent suicide. The screen showed David Crane's face. The same man who had threatened to fire her this morning. Who had told her she was too old. Too obsolete. Too much liability. Dead. 12 hours later. Ruled suicide before the body was cold. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. Colonel Hayes calling. She answered. I'm watching. It's not suicide, Hayes said. Crane was murdered, made to look like suicide. Same people who tried for Sawyer. Why Crane? Because he knew. He was the hospital administrator. He signed off on every shipment, every transfer, every piece of equipment that went missing. He was part of the network. Then why kill him? Because Sawyer survived. Because you saved him. Because the operation is burning and they're cleaning up loose ends. Hayes paused. Crane was loose end number 1. You're loose end number 2. Evelyn looked at Sawyer, at Ranger, at the room that was supposed to be safe but was just a coffin waiting to close. How many people know I'm here? She asked. 3. Me, the 2 MPs outside that door, and whoever hacked our secure communications 6 hours ago. The floor dropped out of Evelyn's stomach. Say that again. Someone breached our network. We caught it late. Don't know what they got. Don't know how deep they went. But if they saw traffic related to Sawyer, they saw traffic related to you. Then this location is burned. Yes. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. I'm working on extraction, but it takes time to... We don't have time. Evelyn was already moving, checking Sawyer's vitals, calculating what he could survive, how far he could move. What transportation would work with a patient barely 12 hours post-surgery? We need to move now. Move where every military facility is compromised. Every hospital is a kill zone. Where can you go that they won't find you? Evelyn stopped, thought, ran through every contact she had burned 15 years ago, every connection she had deliberately destroyed when she disappeared. Except one. I know a place, she said. Give me 2 hours. Commander, 2 hours, then I'm off grid. Don't call me. Don't track me. Don't send anyone after me. If this network is compromised, every communication is poison. She hung up, looked at the MPS outside. Young, competent, but young. If a team came for Sawyer, these two would die first. Bravely, pointlessly. She wouldn't let that happen. Evelyn opened the door. We're moving, now. The taller MP frowned. Ma'am, we have orders to hold this position. Your orders are compromised. This location is burned. You can stay and die defending an empty room, or you can help me get this soldier somewhere safe. Where, classified, you coming or not? They looked at each other, had a conversation without words, or words, the way soldiers do when trust matters more than rank. We're coming, the tall one said. Evelyn nodded, returned to Sawyer. Can you walk? I think so. Thinking isn't good enough. Yes or no? Sawyer gritted his teeth, swung his legs over the side of the bed, stood, swayed. The color drained from his face, but he stayed upright. Yes, he gasped. Good. Ranger stays with you, hand on his collar. Let him carry some of your weight. These two MP will flank you. I'll lead. We move fast, we move quiet. Anyone tries to stop us, you do exactly what I say. Understood. Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. I work for a living. That got a ghost of a smile from Sawyer. Military humor, dark, necessary. They moved out, down the hallway. Evelyn's senses were on fire. Every shadow was threat. Every sound was danger. But her body remembered this. The rhythm of movement under pressure. The weight of responsibility for lives that weren't hers. The calculation of acceptable risk versus necessary action. They took the stairs slowly. Sawyer's breathing was labored but controlled. Ranger matched his pace. The dog's presence kept him moving even when pain wanted him to stop. Ground floor, the entrance where Evelyn had come in, she approached carefully. Checked the street through filthy windows. Empty. No vehicles. No movement. Too empty. Too quiet. Portland at 4 a.m. should have some life. Street cleaners, late shift workers, someone. This silence was artificial, imposed. Back door, Evelyn said. Now. They reversed, found a service exit. Heavy door. Fire alarm had been disabled. Someone had planned for emergency extraction. Someone who knew how these things worked. Evelyn pushed through. Alley behind the building. Dumpsters. Broken pavement. Smell of rot and rain and neglect. A van waited 50 feet away. Civilian. White. No markings. Driver visible through the windshield. Not military. Not young. Not clean cut. Evelyn recognized the posture before she saw the face. Duncan Cross, 62 years old. Same age as Evelyn. Formerly petty officer, first class. SEAL Team 3. Afghanistan, Syria. The kind of soldier who never made headlines because his work happened in darkness. He stepped out of the van. Jeans, flannel shirt, work boots, looking like every other tradesman in Portland. Except for his eyes. Those were operator eyes. They never changed. Ghost, he said, using her old call sign. Been a long time. 18 years, Evelyn replied. Thought you were dead. I am, officially. Duncan smiled. No humor in it. Just like you. How did you know I needed extraction? Because I'm the one who's been watching your back for 15 years. You really think you stayed invisible by accident? Evelyn stared, pieces falling into place. The supply clerk job that appeared when she needed work. The apartment that rented to her despite no references. The life that had seemed almost too easy to build. You've been running interference. Someone had to. You saved my life in Fallujah. I owed you. That debt's been paid. Not to me, it hasn't. Duncan opened the van's sliding door. Get in, we don't have much time. The MPS helped Sawyer into the back. Ranger jumped in after. Evelyn hesitated, looking at Duncan, at the life he represented, the past she had tried to bury. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere they won't look. Somewhere full of people who remember what loyalty means. Duncan's face hardened. The old VA hospital, the one on Morrison Street, the one they've been trying to shut down for 10 years. That place is a disaster, barely functional. Exactly. They're hunting you in military facilities, in modern hospitals, in places with security and surveillance and records. They won't think to look in the place everyone's been ignoring. Evelyn climbed in. The door slid shut. Duncan got behind the wheel. The van pulled away from the abandoned building. Into streets that were starting to wake up. Early morning traffic, delivery trucks. The world pretending yesterday's violence didn't happen because tomorrow would bring more. Inside the van, Sawyer leaned against the wall. Ranger pressed against his leg. The two MPs sat ready. Weapons visible now. No more pretending. Evelyn's phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Text from unknown number. We know where you are. We know where you're going. You can't hide. And everyone who helps you will die with you. She showed it to Duncan. He read it. His jaw tightened. Escalation. They're scared. They should be. You planning to fight? I'm planning to survive. Fighting's just part of that. Duncan nodded, drove. The van moved through Portland's industrial district, past warehouses, past loading docks, past the infrastructure that kept cities alive while remaining invisible to people who lived in them. They pulled into an alley behind Morrison Foss Hospital. The building was old, 70s construction, brick, concrete, the architectural style that valued function over beauty. Windows were barred, doors were reinforced. It looked like what it was, a fortress built to protect men who had already survived one war and were trying to survive the aftermath. Duncan killed the engine. We've got friends inside, people who remember what we did, what we sacrificed. They'll help. How many? Enough. They unloaded. Sawyer moved better now. Adrenaline was a drug that worked when nothing else did. They entered through a service entrance. Codes had been changed. Locks had been upgraded. Someone was running security properly. Inside the hospital was cleaner than expected. Old but maintained. Fluorescent lights buzzed but worked. Hallways showed wear, but not abandonment. A man appeared from a side corridor. Late 60s, white hair, lean build. The kind of fitness that came from discipline rather than vanity. He wore orderly scrubs, but his eyes were veteran eyes. Duncan, the man said, then looked at Evelyn, stopped, stared. Commander Thorne, heard you were dead. So did I, Evelyn replied. Who are you? Maddox Sterling, gunnery sergeant, retired Marines Force Recon. He looked at Sawyer, at Ranger, at the MPS. You bring trouble with you, yes. Good, was getting bored. Maddox gestured down the hallway. Got a room set up, medical equipment, privacy. Can't promise much, but it's better than bleeding in an alley. They followed him through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and age. Past rooms where veterans sat watching television or sleeping or staring at walls. Men who had given everything and received almost nothing in return. The room Maddox led them to was small. Single bed, medical equipment that looked 30 years old but functional, window with bars, door that locked from inside. Sawyer collapsed onto the bed. The MPS took positions by the door. Ranger settled on the floor, keeping watch. Evelyn turned to Duncan and Maddox. How many veterans are in this building? About 60, Maddox said. Most are 60 plus, some older, all combat, all forgotten by everyone except each other. Can they fight? Maddox smiled. Cold, hard. Commander, we're old, we're broken. Half of us have PTSD. The other half have cancer. But we all remember how to kill people who need killing. So yes, we can fight. Duncan pulled Evelyn aside, lowered his voice. There are others. From the old teams, SEAL, Ranger, Delta, men who fake died like we did. Men who've been hiding for years. I can call them, bring them here. How many? 5, maybe 6. All our age, all still capable. Evelyn looked at the room, at Sawyer bleeding through his bandages, at Ranger watching her with eyes that remembered pain and the hands that had eased it, at 2 young MPS who had chosen loyalty over orders. This was insane. A 62-year-old woman, a handful of old soldiers, defending a dying SEAL against an enemy with unlimited resources. But insanity was relative, and sometimes the only option left was to stand and fight. Make the calls, Evelyn said. Gather everyone who can hold a weapon. Tell them we've got maybe 12 hours before they come for us. And then, Duncan asked. Evelyn's eyes went hard, cold, the eyes of someone who had made these calculations before and survived. Then we remind them why old soldiers don't fade away. We just wait for the right fight. Duncan nodded, pulled out a phone, started making calls, to ghosts, to men who had died on paper but lived in shadows, to soldiers who had been told they were obsolete but had never believed it. Maddox watched Evelyn. You got a plan, Commander. Working on it. Work faster. They'll be here by dawn. Evelyn looked out the barred window, at the sky lightening from black to gray, at the city waking up to another day of pretending yesterday's sins didn't matter. Dawn was 3 hours away. Time to remember who she used to be. Time to become ghost again. Dawn broke over Portland like a wound that wouldn't close. Gray light filtered through clouds heavy with the promise of rain, the Morrison 5. A hospital stood silent in that uncertain illumination. A fortress built for men the country had forgotten. Men who never forgot what they were. Inside room 312, Evelyn Thorne stood by the window. She hadn't slept. Sleep required trust. Trust got people killed. 3 hours of preparation, not just tactical, mental. She was reaching back through 15 years of deliberate silence, finding the soldier she had buried. The commander who had led men into darkness and brought them out alive. Ghost, that's what they had called her. Because she appeared where enemies didn't expect. Killed before they knew she was there. Vanished before reinforcements arrived. Ghost had been retired for 15 years. Tonight, Ghost was coming back. Sawyer was stable on the bed, better color, steadier breathing. Duncan had brought real medical supplies, not the expired surplus most VA facilities survived on. Someone had connections that went deeper than official channels. Beside the bed, Ranger rested on the floor. Not the 5-year-old dog Evelyn had written down in her initial assessment. 19 years old. She'd done the math wrong in the chaos. 2006 to now. 19 years since Afghanistan. Since she'd pulled shrapnel from his leg with forceps sterilized over a cigarette lighter. Since she'd whispered his name into existence because he needed something solid to answer to. The dog was ancient by working standards. Gray around the muzzle. Arthritis in that right hind leg. But his eyes were still sharp. Still tracking. Still remembering the woman who had saved him when the world was fire and blood. 3 knocks on the door. Pause. 2 knocks. Clear signal. Duncan entered first. Behind him came 4 men who moved like they were carved from old wars and older pain. The first rolled forward in a wheelchair. Maddox Sterling, 68. Shoulders that still showed the build of a man who had once carried wounded Marines across Mogadishu under enemy fire. Lost his legs in 93. Never lost his edge. "Commander," he said. His voice carried the gravel of too many cigarettes and too many nights screaming at memories. "Gunnery Sergeant Sterling, Force Recon. If they come, they'll learn why old Marines don't die. We just reload." A Remington 87012 gauge rested across his lap like an old friend. The second man was tall, 71, Garrett Kane, white beard trimmed to military precision, Master Sergeant, Army Rangers, Explosives Ordnance Disposal. 30 years dismantling bombs. Tonight he'd be building them again. Third was Silas Harding, 65, Native American, Technical Sergeant, Air Force Pararescue. He hadn't spoken yet, didn't need to. His hands did his talking, checking gear, assessing angles, calculating fields of fire with the quiet efficiency of a man who had jumped into hostile territory to save pilots while everyone else was running away. The fourth man looked like death was negotiating terms. Tobias Reed, 73, skin stretched over bones, eyes carrying the yellow tint of organ failure. Senior Chief, Navy Corpsman, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months left, maybe less. He extended a skeletal hand to Evelyn. "Figure I'm dying anyway, Commander. Might as well die standing up instead of lying down full of morphine." Evelyn took his hand, felt bone through paper-thin skin, felt strength that had nothing to do with muscle mass. "You understand what's coming?" she asked them all. "Professional contractors? Young, fast, well-armed, body armor, night vision. They will try to kill everyone in this building." "Been a while since anyone tried to kill me," Maddox said. "Was starting to think people forgot I existed." Garrett nodded. "Dying of boredom beats dying of old age." Silas said nothing, just checked his knife. Old, carbon steel, the kind that had opened more than letters. Tobias smiled with no teeth showing. "I'm already a dead man. They're just showing up late to collect." Duncan spread blueprints across the table. Morrison Fava Hospital, 4 floors, east and west wings. Too many entry points for 5 old men and 2 young MPs to defend. But Evelyn hadn't survived 30 years by defending. She survived by controlling terrain, by making enemies fight where their advantages became liabilities. "We don't defend the whole building," she said. Her finger traced the blueprint. "We defend this floor, 3rd floor, east wing. We create a kill box, 1 entry point, 1 corridor, 60 feet of open hallway where their training works against them." Maddox leaned forward from his wheelchair, studied the map. 60 feet, 12 wide, no cover. "Anyone comes through that stairwell door walks into a shooting gallery." "Exactly. Garrett, can you rig the doors?" "Rig them to do what?" "Main stairwell gets rigged to blow on command. Emergency stairwell gets locked from inside. Alarmed. Any breach we know immediately." Garrett's eyes lit up with the particular joy of a man being asked to do what he was born for. Give me an hour and a trip to a hardware store. You have 40 minutes and whatever's in the maintenance closet. Silas, your overwatch, roof access, eyes on the parking lot, anything moves I want to know before it reaches the door. Silas nodded once. Rose. Left without a sound. Ghost recognizing ghost. Maddox, you anchor the hallway. Center position. Shotgun spread means you don't need surgical precision. You just need to fill space with lead. Haven't missed at this range in 50 years, not starting tonight. Tobias, you're our corpsman. Keep Sawyer stable. Keep trauma supplies ready. We'll have wounded. Yes, Commander? Duncan, you're with me. We're the reactionary force. Anything breaks through, we stop it. Duncan met her eyes. They'd had this conversation before. Different country, different war, same outcome. They'd survived by refusing to die. Like Fallujah, he said. Fallujah got us both killed. On paper. Beats the alternative. Footsteps approached fast. Corporal Jackson, one of the young MPs, 26, 2 tours in Afghanistan, smart enough to be afraid, brave enough to stay. Commander, we have vehicles. 3 black SUVs just entered the parking lot. Staging pattern, they're preparing to breach. Evelyn checked her watch, 6:27 a.m. 43 minutes earlier than her earliest estimate. Someone was pushing the timeline. Someone was scared. Good. Scared people made mistakes. How many personnel visible? Can't confirm through tinted windows, but those are escalates. 6 per vehicle minimum. 18 hostiles. Possibly more. 18, not the 8 she'd expected, not even 12. 18 meant escalation. Meant someone had authorized overwhelming force. Meant they weren't taking chances. Neither was Evelyn. The old calm settled over her like a familiar coat. Combat calm, where heartbeats slowed, where time stretched, where 30 years of training took over and the conscious mind became a passenger. Everyone to positions. Duncan get non-combatants evacuated. West wing. Ground floor. Away from the fighting. Already done. Started moving them 30 minutes ago. Evelyn keyed the radio Duncan had distributed. Garrett status. Static, then charges set on main stairwell. Emergency exit locked and alarmed. I used DD8 cord from the old munitions locker and blasting caps I made from. I don't need the recipe. I need confirmation it works. It'll work. They breach that door. They're going to learn what shape charges feel like. And Silas, what do you see? 3 vehicles, 18 personnel confirmed, full tactical loadout, plate carriers, helmets, AR platforms. Suppressed. They're running radio checks. Synchronized breach in 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 240 seconds. Evelyn moved to Sawyer's bedside. The young SEAL was sitting up now. Color better, pain managed, but he was still 12 hours post-surgery, still wounded, still vulnerable. How do you feel, she asked. Like someone shot me 3 times and tried to poison me. So basically operational. Can you shoot? Can I hit what I aim at, or can I just pull a trigger? Either. Sawyer stood, swayed slightly. Ranger stood with him. The old dog pressed against his leg, supporting weight, providing balance. 19 years old and still working. Duncan handed Sawyer a Glock 19. 15 rounds. The young SEAL checked the magazine, racked the slide. His hands moved with the autonomy of muscle memory. Listen carefully, Evelyn said. You stay in this room. Door locked, window covered. Anyone comes through that door who isn't me or Duncan, you shoot them until they stop moving. Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. And Sawyer, if this goes wrong, if they get past us, you take Ranger and you go out that window. Fire escape. You run, you disappear, you survive. That's not a request, that's an order. Sawyer's jaw worked. I'm not running while you fight. You're not running. You're completing the mission. The mission is you stay alive to testify. Everything else is secondary. Understood. A long pause, then understood, Commander. Evelyn moved into the hallway. 60 feet of corridor stretched before her, fluorescent lights humming, tile floor reflecting nothing. No cover, no concealment, just empty space waiting to become a killing ground. Maddox had positioned his wheelchair at the 30-foot mark. Perfect center point. Maximum effective range for a shotgun. Spare shells arranged in pouches welded to the chair's frame. A man who'd had 19 years to prepare for this exact scenario. Commander, he said. Question, why'd they call you Ghost? Evelyn took position behind a doorframe, checked her Glock 17. 17 rounds, plus 2 spare magazines. 51 bullets. She'd killed 23 people in her career. Tonight might double that number. 3 reasons, she said. I appeared where I wasn't supposed to be. I killed people who didn't see me coming. I disappeared before anyone realized what happened. Maddox laughed, low, rough, like gravel in a blender. I like you. Don't. People I like tend to die. Good thing I'm already dead then. On paper, anyway. Duncan took position opposite Evelyn, mirror image, creating a crossfire that would turn the hallway into a geometry problem with lethal solutions. The building went quiet. That particular silence before violence. When hearts pound but bodies freeze. When breath sounds too loud. When time feels elastic and breakable. Evelyn closed her eyes, said a prayer she didn't believe to a God she'd stopped trusting in Fallujah. But prayers were habits. Habits were survival mechanisms. And survival was the only religion that mattered. The radio crackled. They're moving? Silas's voice, calm, flat. 18 personnel, 3 teams of 6. Team 1 taking main entrance. Team 2 circling to West Wing. Team 3 establishing overwatch across the street. Sniper rifle visible. They have elevated fire support. Professional, coordinated. These weren't private security guards playing soldier. These were real operators, former military, men who knew what they were doing, which meant the last guard had to be better. Garrett, Evelyn said, how long until Team 1 reaches your door? 2 minutes, maybe 90 seconds. They're fast. Let them in. Let them commit. Let them get halfway up those stairs before you blow the charges. I want survivors. Survivors can talk. Copy that. Evelyn felt her breathing slow. Felt time begin its strange dilation. The world sharpened. Details emerged. The scratch on the tile, 3 feet to her left. The flicker in the overhead light. The smell of industrial cleaner and old coffee and fear sweat. Duncan caught her eye across the hallway. Gave a small nod. Not confidence, acknowledgement. They'd been here before. Different country, different enemy. Same math. Kill or die. Survive or don't. They'd chosen survive before. They'd choose it again. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell, multiple boots, moving fast, tactical spacing, professional entry technique. The stairwell door opened. 2 operators came through first. Black tactical gear, helmets, plate carriers, rifles up and ready. They flowed into the hallway with practiced efficiency. Cleared left, cleared right. Saw Maddox in his wheelchair 60 feet away. For 2 seconds they hesitated, brains trying to process what eyes were seeing. An old man, in a wheelchair, holding a shotgun like it was part of his body. Not a threat. Confusion. Uncertainty. Maddox didn't hesitate. The Remington roared. Thunder in a tube. The first operator went down hard. Body armor stopped the buckshot from penetrating. Physics didn't stop the kinetic energy from shattering ribs and collapsing lungs. The second operator spun, raising his rifle. Training kicking in. Maddox fired again. Closer range. The operator's rifle clattered to tile. His hands went to his face, streaming through a throat full of blood. 4 more operators poured through the door, fast, professional, moving to cover that didn't exist. Evelyn stepped out from her doorframe. 2 shots, center mass. The lead operator went down. Not dead, plate carrier, but pain broke concentration, broke rhythm, broke the perfect choreography of tactical entry. Duncan fired from the opposite side. Crossfire. The operators were caught in a geometry problem they couldn't solve. Forward meant guns. Back meant failure. Lateral meant exposing their flanks. They chose forward because operators don't retreat. Retreat means failure. Failure means death. Better to die attacking than live with the shame of running. It was exactly the wrong choice. Maddox fired 3 more times. The hallway filled with thunder and smoke and the copper smell of blood mixing with gunpowder. Operators went down, not all dead, but down and out of the fight, wounded, bleeding, learning the hard lesson that old men with nothing to lose are more dangerous than young men with careers to protect. Silence crashed back down, ears ringing, breathing hard, the smell of violence hanging in the air like a physical presence. 6 operators on the floor, not dead, wounded, groaning. Calling for backup that wasn't coming fast enough. Duncan moved forward, low, fast, kicked weapons away from reaching hands, zip-tied wrists behind backs. Combat efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Just the mechanical precision of a man who'd done this 100 times in countries whose names were still classified. Evelyn keyed her radio. Silas, status on Team 2. They heard the engagement. They're pulling back, regrouping, calling for new instructions. Team 3. Overwatch position is moving. They're relocating. They weren't expecting resistance. Good. Fear was a weapon. Uncertainty was a force multiplier. But Evelyn knew this was just the opening move. The probe, testing defenses, measuring response time, calculating costs. Team 2 would come harder, smarter, more prepared. The radio crackled again. Different frequency, different voice. Commander Thorne. Male, late 50s. Authority, command. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. Evelyn recognized it immediately. 18 years since she'd heard that voice, but some sounds you never forget. Some voices leave scars. Marcus Holt, she said. I should have known. Laughter, cold. When Sawyer survived, when someone saved him at the hospital, when a supply clerk performed a needle decompression that most doctors couldn't do. I should have known Ghost was still alive. You should have left him alone. I should have, but I didn't. And now we're here. You have 6 of my men. I have 12 more, plus 18 additional contractors arriving in 30 minutes. You can't win this, Evelyn. You're 62 years old. You're fighting with broken old men. This isn't Fallujah. This isn't Afghanistan. This is Portland, and you're out of your depth. Evelyn looked at Maddox, at Duncan, at the hallway stained with blood and brass casings, at old soldiers who had volunteered to die because someone finally asked them to matter again. Marcus, she said, I taught you combat medicine in 1995. I taught you tactics. I taught you how to save lives. I taught you how to survive. You did, and I learned. Better than you, because while you were hiding in supply closets, I was building an empire. $40 million over 20 years. Medical supplies, weapons, information, everything wars need, everything people pay for. You sold equipment meant to save soldiers' lives. I sold equipment to the highest bidder. Economics, Evelyn. Supply and demand. Things you never understood because you were too busy being noble. How'd that work out? You're stocking shelves. I'm worth 40 million. Who won? Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. Not anger, recognition. She'd seen this before. Men who took everything the military taught them and turned it into profit instead of purpose. Men who confused survival with success. Men who forgot that some things mattered more than money. In 30 minutes, Holt continued, my reinforcements arrive. 30 operators total. You can't hold against 30. You know it. I know it. So here's what happens. You surrender. You hand over Sawyer. You walk away. I let you live. I let your old men live. Everyone goes home. No more bloodshed. And Sawyer dies, obviously. He's seen too much, knows too much. But it'll be quick. Professional. Not like the slow death you're giving him by making him watch old men die protecting him. Duncan caught Evelyn's eye, shook his head. No surrender. They'd made that decision before. Different war. Same answer. Counteroffer, Evelyn said. You leave. Now. You disappear. You take your money and you run. Because if you send more men into this building, I will kill every single one of them. And then I will come for you. Holt laughed. Real humor this time. You're 62. You're old. You're slow. You're Ghost, Evelyn interrupted. I'm Ghost. And ghosts don't age, Marcus. We just get better at haunting. She switched off the radio. Duncan stared at her. 30 operators. We can't hold against 30. No, Evelyn agreed. We can't defend against 30, so we don't defend. What do we do? Evelyn looked at the wounded operators on the floor, at the hallway that had become a killing ground, at the building full of old soldiers who'd been told they were useless for so long, they'd started to believe it. Then she looked at Duncan, at her oldest friend, the man who'd carried her 2 miles through Fallujah with a collapsed lung and a dislocated shoulder, who'd saved her life when she was too wounded to save herself. We attack, she said. Duncan's eyes widened. Attack their position. That's suicide. Defending is suicide. Waiting is suicide. Running is suicide. At least attacking gives us a chance. A chance at what? At cutting off the head. Holt's running this operation from that Overwatch vehicle. Take him out, the operation falls apart. How do we get to him? They have eyes on every exit. Evelyn keyed her radio. Garrett, is that utility tunnel still accessible? The one that runs from the basement to the street? Yeah, opens up behind a dumpster 2 blocks west. They won't be watching it. Nobody even knows it exists except maintenance. Good. Duncan and I are going hunting. Commander Maddox said from his wheelchair. That's insane. Probably, Evelyn agreed. But we're old. We're slow. We're obsolete. So insane is all we have left. She looked at the last guard, at men who'd followed her into what should have been their final stand, men who deserved honesty. Hold this position, she said. If Team 2 comes, make them bleed, but don't die for it. If it gets too hot, fall back to Sawyer's room. Barricade the door. Wait for me to come back. And if you don't come back, Tobias asked. His voice was quiet, already accepting. Evelyn smiled. No warmth, just acknowledgement of mathematics. Then you were right. Dying fighting is better than dying slow. She and Duncan moved toward the stairs, down, into the basement, into tunnels that smelled like rust and old water and decades of forgotten maintenance. They emerged behind a dumpster 2 blocks from the hospital. Cold morning air, empty street. Dawn breaking properly now. Pink light touching the edges of buildings. The 3 SUVs were visible across the intersection. Black. Waiting. The third vehicle had its antenna array extended. Command and control. That's where Holt would be. Running communications, coordinating the assault, thinking he was safe. There, Duncan whispered. See the antenna. That's our target. Evelyn studied the vehicle. Tinted windows. Movement visible inside. 2 personnel minimum. Maybe 3. Holt would be running comms. The others would be security. Can you reach the driver's side? Yes. On 3, you take driver. I take passenger. Fast, violent, no warning. Duncan nodded. They moved across the street, using parked cars for cover. Decades of training coming back. Muscle memory that didn't fade. Skills that didn't rust. Just waited to be needed again. They reached the SUV. Evelyn caught Duncan's eye, counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. They yanked doors open simultaneously. The driver tried to react, reached for his weapon. Duncan's knife was faster, found the throat, severed the carotid. The driver made a sound like a broken water pipe. Then nothing. The passenger was faster. Former military, real operator. His hand was already moving toward his rifle when Evelyn grabbed his wrist, twisted, felt bones crack like dry wood. Her other hand found his throat, squeezed. He thrashed. Strong, trained. But training doesn't matter when someone has your windpipe. Physics beats technique. He went limp. In the back seat, Marcus Holt stared at her. 58 years old, gray hair, hard face carved from 30 years of operating in shadows. The face of someone who'd learned to profit from other people's wars. His hand was moving toward a pistol on the seat beside him. Evelyn's Glock was already aimed at his head. Don't, she said. Holt's hand stopped. He smiled. Cold. I should have known it would be you. When Sawyer's report came through, when someone saved him at the hospital. I thought maybe Ghost was still out there, still alive, still playing hero. You were my student, Evelyn said. Her voice was flat, empty of everything except disappointment. SEAL training, 1995. I taught you combat medicine, taught you tactics, taught you how to save lives. You taught me how to survive, Holt corrected. And I learned, better than you, because you stopped. You hid. You pretended you were just a supply clerk. But I kept going. I adapted. I evolved. $40 million, Evelyn. That's what evolution looks like. You sold equipment meant to save soldiers. I sold equipment to whoever paid most. That's called economics. That's called reality. The things you never understood because you were too busy being noble. Duncan kept his gun trained on Holt from the driver's seat. His finger rested on the trigger, waiting for Evelyn's decision. Give me one reason not to kill you right now, Evelyn said. Because you need me alive to call off my backup, 18 operators. They'll be here in 15 minutes. You kill me, they come anyway. They kill everyone in that hospital. All those old soldiers, all those veterans. Sawyer, Duncan, everyone dies. Or I call them off. I walk away, I disappear. You never see me again. Sawyer lives, your friends live. You keep playing supply clerk. Everyone survives. Simple mathematics, Commander. Cost-benefit analysis. 1 life versus 60 lives. Even you can do that math. Evelyn's finger rested on the trigger. 1 pound of pressure, that's all it would take. End Marcus Holt. End the threat. End the betrayal of everything she'd taught him. But also end 60 veterans. End Duncan. End Sawyer. End the last guard. End the proof that old soldiers still mattered. Commander, Duncan said quietly, whatever you decide, I'm with you. Evelyn looked at Holt, at the man she'd trained 29 years ago, who'd taken everything she taught and twisted it into profit, who'd confused survival with success, who'd forgotten that some things mattered more than money. She lowered her gun, Call them off, she said. Holt reached for his radio slowly, deliberately, making sure she saw every movement. Keyed it. All teams, stand down. Repeat. All teams, stand down. Mission aborted. Return to base. A voice crackled back. Sir, we're in position. We can breach in. I said stand down. That's an order. Withdraw immediately. Silence, then copy, standing down. Holt set the radio down, looked at Evelyn. See, I keep my word. Unlike you, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You're right, Evelyn said. You don't pretend. She raised her gun, fired once. The bullet took Holt in the right shoulder, not lethal, not immediately, but painful, disabling. The shoulder shattered, bone fragments tearing through muscle. Holt screamed, high, broken, the sound of a man who'd never actually been shot before, who'd spent 30 years orchestrating violence from safe distances. What the hell, he gasped, blood seeping between his fingers. We had a deal. We did, Evelyn agreed. I wouldn't kill you, I'm not. But I never said you'd walk away healthy. She pulled zip ties from her pocket, bound his wrist behind his back. Tight, professional. The way she'd done 1,000 times in a dozen countries whose names were still redacted from official reports. Duncan, call Colonel Hayes. Tell him we have a gift. One Marcus Holt, former SEAL, current black market arms dealer, complete with recorded confession on his own communications. Duncan pulled out his phone, made the call. Evelyn looked at Holt bleeding in the back seat. You said I taught you survival. I did, but I also taught you honor, integrity, loyalty. You just never learned those parts. You learned the techniques, but you missed the purpose. Honor doesn't pay bills, Holt spat through gritted teeth. No, but it lets you sleep at night. And right now, I'm sleeping fine. How about you? She climbed out of the SUV. Dawn had broken fully now. Pink and gold painting, the Portland skyline. The city waking up. Traffic starting, coffee shops opening, life continuing. Unaware that a war had just been fought and won in the spaces between their awareness. Duncan joined her on the sidewalk. They stood side by side. Two old soldiers, watching the sun rise over a city they'd just saved without anyone knowing it needed saving. We did it, Duncan said. We survived, Evelyn corrected. That's all we ever do. Survive one more day. Sirens in the distance. Federal response. Hayes had moved fast. Black SUVs would be here in minutes, taking custody of Holt, taking control of the crime scene, making everything classified and buried and official. Come on, Evelyn said. Let's go home. They walked back to the hospital, through streets that looked different in morning light, through a world that had shifted slightly on its axis without anyone noticing. At the hospital, the last guard was waiting. Maddox, Garrett, Silas, Tobias, still alive, still standing, still proving that old didn't mean useless. Sawyer was sitting up, color good, Ranger beside him. The old dog's tail moved when he saw Evelyn. Recognition, gratitude, memory that transcended time. It's over, Evelyn said. Holt's in custody. His network is being dismantled. You're safe. Sawyer closed his eyes, relief washing over him like a physical wave. Thank you, Commander. Don't thank me. Thank them. She gestured to the last guard. They held the line while I went hunting. Maddox grunted from his wheelchair. Been waiting 20 years for a good fight. Glad I didn't die before I got one. Garrett was already packing his explosives back into a duffel bag. Shame we didn't get to blow the charges. Spent good time rigging those. Silas said nothing, just nodded once. Mission accomplished. Words unnecessary. Tobias looked tired, the kind of tired that came from a body pushing past its limits, but his eyes were alive, bright. For the first time in months, he looked like a man who had purpose. Worth it, he said simply. Duncan put a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Come on, Ghost. Let's get out of here before the alphabet agencies show up and make us sign things. They left the hospital, walked to Duncan's truck, climbed in, drove away as federal vehicles pulled up. Black SUVs, serious faces. Classification protocols. Let them handle the paperwork. Let them write the reports. Let them turn this into something official and sanitized and safe for congressional oversight. The last guard had done the real work, and real work didn't need paperwork. 6 weeks later, the conference room at Mercy General Hospital had been redesigned since David Crane's death. Brighter, more windows, less like a corporate interrogation room, more like a place where actual medicine was discussed. Evelyn sat at the table wearing civilian clothes, jeans, button-down shirt, her gray hair still in its tight bun. But something was different now, the way she carried herself, the way people looked at her, the way space seemed to acknowledge her presence. The new administrator stood at the head of the table, younger than Crane, smarter. Someone who'd actually read Evelyn's file after the Morrison 5A incident made national news, after senator inquiries, after the FBI investigation that sent 40 people to prison. Commander Thorne, she said, on behalf of Mercy General and its board, I want to apologize. We failed to recognize your capabilities. We failed to utilize your experience. We failed you. I didn't need recognition, Evelyn said. I just needed to do my job. Which you did, spectacularly, which is why we're offering you a new position, Director of Combat Medicine Training. You'd develop curriculum, train staff, teach the things protocols don't cover, the things that matter when everything goes wrong. Evelyn looked at the offer letter on the table. Good salary, full benefits, respect, authority, everything she thought she didn't want, everything she'd been hiding from for 15 years. What about supply clerk, she asked. We'll find someone else to stock shelves. We need you teaching. Because what you did, what you and those veterans did, that needs to be remembered. That needs to be taught. That needs to be passed on before it's lost. Evelyn picked up the offer letter, read it carefully. Thought about 15 years of invisibility, of hiding, of pretending to be small and unimportant and forgettable. Thought about Sawyer, about Ranger, about the last guard, about old soldiers who'd been told they were useless so many times they'd started believing it, until someone asked them to matter again. I'll do it, she said, on one condition. Name it. I bring my own instructors. Duncan Cross, Maddox Sterling, Garrett Kane, Silas Harding, Tobias Reed, the veterans from Morrison 5A, they teach too. The administrator didn't hesitate. Done. When can you start? Monday. 3 hours later, Evelyn stood in front of 30 medical students. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, young faces, eager, unscarred, not yet broken by the reality of what medicine looked like when protocols failed and people died and decisions mattered. Dr. Brennan Ashford sat in the front row. Not as an instructor, as a student, because he'd learned something that night 6 weeks ago. That competence wasn't about credentials. It was about experience. And experience couldn't be taught from textbooks. Most of you will never see combat, Evelyn began. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who'd stood in fire and walked out carrying wounded. But someday you'll face a situation where everything goes wrong, where the patient is dying, where protocol fails, where the book doesn't have answers, where you have to make a choice between doing what's safe and doing what's right. She paused. Let that sink into 30 young minds that still believed medicine was about following rules. I'm here to teach you how to make that choice and how to live with yourself afterward. A young nurse raised her hand, hesitant. Commander, is it true you were a Navy SEAL? Yes. Is it true you killed people? Evelyn met her eyes, didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't hide behind euphemisms or classifications. Yes, 24 confirmed, all necessary, all justified, all remembered. I'm not proud of it, but I do it again to save the people beside me, because that's what medicine is, saving people, even when it costs you something. The room went silent, uncomfortable. Truth had that effect on people who'd spent their lives in sterile classrooms learning sanitized versions of reality. Any other questions? Evelyn asked. Ashford raised his hand. What's the most important thing you learned in 30 years of combat medicine? Evelyn thought about that, about Fallujah, about Afghanistan, about Morrison 5A, about Rangers saluting her in an emergency room because dogs never forgot who saved them, about old men who'd fought one last time because someone asked them to matter. That medicine isn't about protocols, she said finally. It's about people, and people are worth saving, even when they're old, even when they're broken, even when they're invisible, even when the world says they don't matter anymore. She looked out the window at the Portland skyline, at the city that had almost lost 60 veterans because someone decided profit mattered more than honor. Especially then. The class ended. Students filed out, talking quietly, processing, unsettled by honesty. Ashford lingered. Thank you, he said, for that night, for not letting me kill Sawyer, for teaching me that sometimes the book is wrong. The book is always wrong, Evelyn said. The book is written by people who survived, but it can't capture the moment. When survival hangs on a decision, no book can make for you. That's what instinct is. That's what experience teaches. How to make that decision faster than thought. Is that what you did in the hospital? Every day. For 30 years. And I'm still here, so it must have worked. Ashford nodded, left, his footsteps echoing in the empty classroom. Evelyn gathered her notes, walked to the parking lot. Duncan was waiting, leaning against his truck. Flannel shirt, work boots, looking like every other tradesman in Portland except for the way he stood. Alert, aware, ready. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Good, strange. I'm not used to people listening." "Get used to it. You're famous now. Ghost is out. Everyone knows." Evelyn climbed into the passenger seat. "Famous is dangerous." "Famous is done. Holt's network is dismantled. 40 arrests. Everyone involved is either in prison or dead. The threat's over." And Sawyer had testified before Congress 2 weeks ago. His testimony led to military reform legislation, passed with bipartisan support. He's a hero. He's a survivor. There's a difference. Duncan drove. Through Portland, past the hospital, past Morrison 5A, toward Evelyn's apartment. Through streets she'd walked for 15 years while pretending to be someone she wasn't. "You know," Duncan said, "we're not invisible anymore. People know who we are, what we did, what we're still capable of." "Is that a problem?" "No, it's a relief. I'm tired of pretending I'm not a soldier." Evelyn looked at her hands. Steady, capable. The hands that had killed 24 people and saved hundreds. The hands that had pulled shrapnel from a dying dog 19 years ago and earned loyalty that transcended time. "Me too," she said quietly. Duncan pulled up to her building. She opened the door, stopped. "Thank you," she said, "for Fallujah, for watching my back for 15 years, for not letting me disappear completely." "Brothers don't let brothers fade away," Duncan said, "even when one of them happens to be a woman." Evelyn smiled, real, warm, the first genuine smile in weeks. "Sisters don't either." She walked to her apartment, unlocked it, stepped inside. Ranger was waiting, 19 years old, gray around the muzzle, slow to stand, arthritis making movement painful, but still there, still loyal, still remembering. Evelyn knelt, ran her fingers along the scar on his hind leg. "We made it, old friend, one more time." Ranger's tail moved, slow, tired, but present. On her table, a photograph, taken last week at Morrison 5A, the last guard. 7 old soldiers, Maddox in his wheelchair, Garrett with his tools, Silas silent as ever, Tobias looking healthier than he had in months, Duncan, Sawyer, and Evelyn, standing together, not invisible, not forgotten, not ghosts anymore, just soldiers who remembered, who survived, who refused to fade. Her phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Hayes. Another situation developing. Young operator in trouble. Needs help, interested. Evelyn looked at Ranger, at the photo, at her hands that still knew how to save people, at a life that had just become complicated and visible and real again. She typed back one word always. Because some people were built for this. Built for the moments when everything went wrong and someone needed to make it right. Built for the fights that happened in shadows while the world slept. The world had tried to forget. Had tried to tell her she was obsolete, too old, too slow, too useless. The world had been wrong. Evelyn Thorne was 62 years old. She was commander, medic, SEAL, ghost, and now teacher, passing on what she knew, making sure the next generation understood. That old didn't mean useless. That experience mattered more than protocols. That some battles were worth fighting. And that service never truly ended. It just changed forms.